Well, in a turn of events, for the better in my view, Spotify decided not to give in to the demand of the uber-woke singer to take down the very successful podcast and instead removed Young's music just as he so nicely asked. Spotify then said in a statement, "We want all the world's music and audio content to be available to Spotify users. With that comes great responsibility in balancing both safety for listeners and freedom for creators. We have detailed content policies in place, and we've removed over 20,000 podcast episodes related to COVID since the start of the pandemic. We regret Neil's decision to remove his music from Spotify, but hope to welcome him back soon." So who do you support in this major Spotify battle? Joe Rogan or Neil Young? Send me your thoughts to Dan at gbnews.uk. Tweet them to at gbnews. We've got a poll running there too. But to help you make your minds up, I'm joined now by the rapper and star podcaster himself, Zuby, and the journalist and chief executive of Ernest Media Empire, Ernest Owens. Now, Zuby, you have been a guest on Joe Rogan, if I remember rightly. So I presume you're backing your man.
Yeah, I've been on Joe's podcast twice. We are friendly. I would consider him definitely a guy I know. I know him personally. But I think this is really more about principles. To me personally, I'm not looking at this as being on Team Joe or being on Team Neil. I actually kind of support both of them, and I'm not trying to be a fence sitter here. I think that as a musician, if you don't want your music on Spotify or Apple Music or any other platform, that is up to you and any record company that you might be with. So I think it's a silly ultimatum knowing that Joe Rogan has an exclusive.
I agree with that, Zuby, but I think what the issue is that's not actually the point that he's making. What he's hoping is going to happen is that he's going to get a whole load of other artists who say, I'm boycotting too, and as a result, they pressure Spotify into cancelling Rogan.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to think he's got that kind of pull and that kind of power. That's a complete delusion. The Joe Rogan and Spotify exclusive deal was over $100 million. He's a massive cash cow for them, the most popular podcaster in the world. They're not going to suddenly get rid of his show after recently striking a deal. And it's just a completely ridiculous demand. I'd also say a very childish demand as well, especially considering all the other type of content that exists on Spotify and other platforms.
Ernest Owens, why are you so threatened by Joe Rogan? All this bloke does is sit down and have fascinating conversations with experts that run to many hours in the case of the Robert Malone podcast. Why is that so threatening to you? What are you scared of?
I'm not threatened by him at all. I think he's an idiot. I think the reality is that he puts out a lot of misinformation about the pandemic. And to be quite clear, Spotify is a hypocrite in the fact that they're taking Joe Rogan. They're not taking Joe Rogan off. Neil Young, I am Team Neil Young on this point because of the fact that Spotify has made moral decrees behind taking stuff down based on, their opinions. When R. Kelly was not convicted of sexual abuse and whatnot, they took his music off based on the outcry of protesters and people who felt like him being on there was something against Me Too. Right. And I agreed with that decision. So they made that decision. They opened up the floodgates for subjective interpretation of taking people down and off their platforms based on the timeliness of issues. And Joe Rogan has repeatedly put misinformation out about COVID-19 that really have threatened people's livelihoods. And I think, all these social platforms such as YouTube and others have taken off people who have put COVID misinformation up. So I don't think Neil Young's request is really that crazy or that, immature, because it's been happening throughout the entire pandemic. And I think that Joe Rogan has a huge platform where he's encouraged people to do things that the CDC does not recommend and has been proven to be not credible. And so I think that his podcast poses a health risk to those who are out there consuming his content and the type of people that look at his content. It's just not good information.
Zuby, I want to come back to this word misinformation, right? Because I've written a column about this for the Daily Mail Online today. And I was thinking about all the times that folk like you, folk like me, have said over the past 2 years that were called misinformation at the time and are now widely accepted fact. So, like the fact that COVID-19 leaked from a Wuhan lab, like the fact that face cloth masks are absolutely hopeless at controlling the spread of COVID, like the fact that COVID vaccines don't stop transmission, like the fact that the mRNA vaccines cause the heart condition and myocarditis in some young men. Like the fact that those counted as dying with COVID were infected with the virus while in hospital in many cases and actually died of another cause. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, Zuby. All of these things were called misinformation at the time and are now widely accepted fact.
Exactly.
But you all are all vaccinated. You all are all vaccinated.
Just let Zuby come in and then we'll come back to you, Ernest.
That's fine.
Yeah, the term misinformation is used as a weapon. For example, Spotify never took down R. Kelly's music. Never happened. They removed him from the specific Spotify playlist. His music has never gone off it. So that would technically be misinformation. But however, I think you maybe just got a fact wrong. Misinformation, if you're going to take down everyone who's spread misinformation, you need to take down CNN. You need to take down BBC News. You need to take down every news platform, every journalist, every scientist, all the people from SAGE, Dr. Fauci, everybody has gotten things wrong throughout this pandemic, every single person. So this term misinformation and disinformation is used disingenuously. It's used as a weapon and as a cudgel against anybody who questions the mainstream narrative. And I stand on the principle of freedom of speech and freedom of expression. I think that we need to be able to have these conversations. If you are trying to silence and censor people, you are not the good guy in this situation. The truth will always come out there. People should be able to conversate and debate ideas. If you're trying to shut someone up and stop them from speaking, then I am going to be questioning your motive.
Ernest, don't you think it's quite disturbing that you want all broadcasters to slavishly follow the advice of the CDC? Isn't the job of a broadcaster or a journalist to challenge those decision makers, to ask questions of the decision makers?
First of all, I've never said any of that. I don't think people should be feverishly following him. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that
you say
right
that
now
he has gone against CDC advice.
Like his information that he's putting out, like anti-vaccinations, we know that vaccinations work. We know that many people right now who are dying because of COVID in my country and across the world is dying because either a lack of vaccination access or people who are consuming information that is suggesting that they should not be vaccinated. We all three have gotten vaccinations, I would assume. I think all of us are fully vaccinated that is doing this, right? Many people in your studio would probably have to get vaccinations in order to come back to work. And so to me, it's frustrating that people,
that's not true.
Well,
we don't have vaccine
if they're
mandates.
Not, their likelihood to die from COVID, from what we know from the facts, is that their likelihood to die without a vaccination is much higher than those who are. And in the United States, we know that with the research that we've done, and the research that everyone pretty much knows, is that vaccinations is what's creating the population to decrease in these cases and likelihoods. So, for example, in the United States right now, as we've seen the vaccinations increase, that is part of the reason why we're seeing a lot of people who got Omicron not die who are vaccinated. That's a fact. So we're trying to be anti-vax. We're trying to be anti-vax. Then you're pushing the narrative that we don't need vaccinations.
Okay, Ernest, let Zuby respond. Let Zuby respond, because Ernest's point seems to be that Joe Rogan is encouraging people not to be vaccinated, and that's why he wants them to be.
He's putting a lot of anti-vax information out there.
So let Zuby respond.
No, he's not. Again, this term anti-vax, like disinformation, this is being used as a rhetorical weapon. Joe Rogan has never told people
alternative
not to take
medicine outside of vaccination.
Joe Rogan has not told anyone not to take the vaccine. I have not told anyone not to take the vaccine. I stand for liberty. I stand for freedom of choice, like I do with any other medical intervention.
That's really not. That's really none of your business.
Majority of people.
But that's the cowardice of it.
It's not my business. It doesn't matter to me.
But that's the cowardice, though. We'll sit up here and we'll tell people not to get vaccinated, or they can do whatever they want, even though there's a pandemic out there.
Would you ask Zuby if he had an STD? Would you ask Zuby if he had an STD? No, you wouldn't.
COVID is not the same as an STI. An STI is not the same as COVID, and that's a false equivalency.
I don't think it's any of your business. if Zuby is vaccinated. That's my personal opinion. He can answer if he wants to, but I think it's no one's business.
I think it's hypocritical to say that Joe Rogan pushing out anti-vaccination information, which he is. He's not encouraging people to get vaccinated.
Please define anti-vax information, because you're speaking buzzwords here.
Okay, so since you think it's a buzzword, I think it's very clear. Anti-vax. He is he's against vaccinations. He is saying he's against vaccination on his podcast.
No, he's not. You're lying.
He's promoting
information.
You can be his token. You can be. I would like to talk to Joe Rogan myself. You should bring him on the show and let me talk to him, and not have his token spokesperson talk to him. Put him on the show with me, and I can point out how many times Joe Rogan has been against vaccination. You can even ask him if he's against them. You should go back on the show and ask him, is he against vaccinations? The answer is...
I'm in the States.
Okay, final word to you, Zuby.
People should be free to do what they want. This whole narrative has been blown into oblivion. And according to the CDC, by the way, natural immunity is significantly more effective than vaccination. They finally caved on that one last week. So listen to the CDC.
Fascinating debate. Thank you so much for having it. That was the rapper and podcaster Zuby, and the journalist and chief executive of Ernest Media Empire, Ernest Owens. Fascinating. Loved it. Thank you, guys.